to you Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, Chapter 3. I'm taking this off again because I just find it a little bit annoying. Chapter 3. The Letters from No One. The escape of the Brazilian boa constrictor earned Harry his longest ever punishment. By the time he was allowed out of his cupboard again, the summer holidays had started, and Dudley had already broken his new sign camera, crashed his remote control aeroplane, and, first time on his racing bike, knocked down old Mrs. Fig as she crossed Privet Drive on her crutches. Harry was glad school was over, but there was no escaping Dudley's gang, who visited their house every single day. Piers, Dennis, Malcolm and Gordon were all big and stupid, but as Dudley was the biggest and stupidest of the lot, he was the leader. The rest of them were all quite happy to join in Dudley's favorite sport, Harry hunting. This was why Harry spent as much time as possible out of the house, wandering around and thinking about the end of the holidays, where you could see a tiny ray of hope. When September came, he would be going off to secondary school. And for the first time in his life, he wouldn't be with Dudley. Dudley had a place at Uncle Vernon's old school, Smeltings. Piers Polkes was going there too. Harry, on the other hand, was going to Stonewall High, the local comprehensive. Dudley thought this was very funny. They stuff people's heads down the toilet first day at Stonewall, he told Harry. Want to come upstairs and practice? No thanks, said Harry. The poor toilets never had anything as horrible as your head down it. It might be sick. Then he ran before Dudley could work out what he'd said. One day in July, Aunt Petunia took Dudley to London to buy Smelting's uniform, leaving Harry at Mrs. Fig's. Mrs. Fig wasn't as bad as usual. It turned out she'd broken a leg tripping over one of her cats, and she didn't seem quite as fond of them anymore. She let Harry watch television and gave him a bit of chocolate cake that tasted as though she'd had it for several years. That evening, Dudley paraded around the living room for the family in his brand new uniform. Smelting's boys wore maroon tailcoats, orange knickerbockers and flat straw hats called boaters. They also carried knobbly sticks, used for hitting each other while the teachers weren't looking. This was supposed to be good training for later life. As he looked at Dudley in his new knickerbockers, Uncle Vernon said gruffly that it was the proudest moment of his life. Aunt Petunia burst into tears, and she said she couldn't believe it was her Ickle Dudleykins. He looked so handsome and grown up. Harry didn't trust himself to speak. He thought 2 of his ribs might already have cracked from trying not to laugh. There was a horrible smell in the kitchen next morning when Harry went in for breakfast. It seemed to be coming from a large metal tub in the sink. He went to have a look. The tub was full of what looked like dirty rags swimming in grey water. What's this? He asked Aunt Petunia. Her lips tightened as they always did if he dared to ask a question. Your new school uniform, she said. Harry looked in the bowl again. Oh, he said, I didn't realize it had to be so wet. Don't be stupid, snapped Aunt Petunia. I'm tying some of Dudley's old things grey for you, It looked just like everyone else's when I finished. Harry seriously doubted this, but thought it best not to argue. He sat down at the table and tried not to think about how he was going to look on his first day at Stonewall High, like he was wearing bits of old elephant skin, probably. Dudley and Uncle Vernon came in both wrinkled noses because of the smell from Harry's new uniform. Uncle Vernon opened his newspaper as usual, and Dudley banged the smelting stick, which he carried everywhere, on the table. They heard the click of the letterbox and flop of letters on the doormat. "Get the post, Dudley," said Uncle Vernon from behind his paper. "Make Harry get it. Get the post, Harry. Make Dudley get it. Poke him with your smelting stick, Dudley." Harry touched the smelting stick and went to get the post. 3 things lay on the doormat: a postcard from Uncle Vernon's sister March, who was holidaying on the Isle of Wight, a brown envelope that looked like a bill, and a letter for Harry. Harry picked it up and stared at it, his heart ringing like a giant elastic band. No one ever in his whole life had written to him. Who would? He had no friends, no other relatives. He didn't belong to the library, so he'd never even got rude notes asking for books back. Yet here it was, a letter addressed so plainly there could be no mistake. Mr. Harry Potter, the cupboard under the stairs, 4 Privet Drive, Little Winging, Surrey. The envelope was thick and heavy, made of yellowish parchment, and the address was written in emerald ink. There was no stamp. Turning the envelope over, his hand trembling, Harry saw a purple wax seal bearing a coat of arms, a lion, an eagle, a badger, and the snake surrounding a letter H. "Hurry up, boy," shouted Uncle Vernon from the kitchen. "What are you doing? Checking for letter bombs?" He chuckled at his own joke. Harry went back to the kitchen, still staring at his letter. He handed Uncle Vernon the bill and the postcard, sat down, and slowly began to open the yellow envelope. It always bothered me so much that Harry just didn't open the letter before going to the kitchen. Like, why would he take it to the kitchen with him? He's lived with the Dursleys for so long. How couldn't he know that they were not going to let him have his letter? Yeah, every time I read this, I'm like, Harry, why did you not open that letter before? Uncle Vernon ripped open the bill, snorted in disgust, and flipped over the postcard. "March's ill," he informed Aunt Petunia, ate a funny whelk. "Dad," said Dudley suddenly. "Dad, Harry's got something." Harry was on the point of unfolding his letter, which was written on the same heavy parchment as the envelope, when it was jerked sharply out of his hand by Uncle Vernon. "That's mine," said Harry, trying to snatch it back. "Who'd be writing to you?" sneered Uncle Vernon, shaking the letter open with one hand and glancing at it. His face went from red to green faster than a set of traffic lights, and it didn't stop there. Within a second it was the greyish white of old porridge. "Petunia," he gasped. Dudley tried to grab the letter to read it, but Uncle Vernon held it out of his rage. Aunt Petunia took it curiously and read the first line. For a moment it looked as though she might faint. She clutched her throat and made a choking noise. "Vernon! Oh my goodness, Vernon!" They stared at each other, seeming to have forgotten that Harry and Dudley were still in the room. Dudley wasn't used to being ignored. He gave his father a sharp tap on the head with a smelting stick. "I want to read that letter," he said loudly. "I want to read it," said Harry furiously, "as it's mine." "Get out both of you, croaked Uncle Vernon, stuffing the letter back inside its envelope. I want my letter, he shouted. Let me see it, demanded Dudley. Out, roared Uncle Vernon, and he took both Harry and Dudley by the scruffs of their necks and threw them into the hall, slamming the kitchen door behind them. Harry and Dudley promptly had a furious but silent fight over who would listen at the keyhole. Dudley won, so Harry, his glasses dangling from one ear, lay flat on his stomach to listen at the crack between door and floor. Vernon, Aunt Petunia was saying in a quivering voice, "Look at the address. How could they possibly know where he sleeps? You don't think they're watching the house?" "Watching, spying, might be following us," muttered Uncle Vernon wildly. "But what should we do, Vernon? Should we write back, tell them we don't want?" Harry could see Uncle Vernon's shiny black shoes pacing up and down the kitchen. "No," he said finally. "No, we'll ignore it. If they don't get an answer, yes, that's best. We don't do anything, but..." "But I'm not having one in the house, Petunia. Didn't we swear when we took him in we'd stamp out that dangerous nonsense?" That evening, when he got back from work, Uncle Vernon did something he'd never done before. He visited Harry in his cupboard. "Where's my letter?" said Harry, the moment Uncle Vernon had squeezed through the door. "Who's writing to me?" "No one. It was addressed to you by mistake," said Uncle Vernon shortly. "I have burned it." "It was not a mistake," said Harry angrily. "It had my cupboard on it." "Silence!" yelled Uncle Vernon, and a couple of spiders fell from the ceiling. He took a few deep breaths and then forced his face into a smile which looked quite painful. Yes, Harry, about this cupboard. Your aunt and I have been thinking you're really getting a bit big for it. We think it might be nice if you moved into Dudley's second bedroom." "Why?" said Harry. "Don't ask questions," snapped his uncle. "Take the stuff upstairs now." The Dursleys' home had 4 bedrooms, one for Uncle Vernon and Aunt Petunia, one for visitors, usually Uncle Vernon's sister Marge, one where Dudley slept and one where Dudley kept all the toys and things that wouldn't fit into his first bedroom. It only took Harry one trip upstairs too. Move everything he owned from the cupboard to his room. He sat down on the bed and stared around him. Nearly everything here was broken. The Manfold sign camera was lying on top of a small working tank Dudley had once driven off a next-door's dog. In the corner was Dudley's first ever television set, which he'd put his foot through when his favorite program had been cancelled. There was a large bird cage, which had once held a parrot that Dudley had swapped at school for a real air rifle, which was up on a shelf with the end all bent because Dudley had sat on it. Other shelves were full of books. They were the only things in the room that looked as though they'd never been touched. From downstairs came the sound of Dudley bawling at his mother. "I don't want him in there. I need that room. Make him get out." Harry sighed and stretched out on the bed. Yesterday he'd haven't given anything to be up here. Today he'd rather be back in his cupboard with that letter than up here without it. I never quite understood what Uncle Vernon put Harry into that bedroom. It doesn't make any sense. Like if people who send the letters, as we all know who it is, if they find Harry in that cupboard, obviously they're gonna know when he lives somewhere else. And anyway, the letters arrive in the same post box anyway, so it doesn't really make any sense. Next morning at breakfast, everyone was rather quiet. Dudley was in shock. He'd screamed, whacked his father with a smelting stick, been sick on purpose, kicked his mother and thrown his tortoise. through the greenhouse roof, and he still didn't have his room back. Harry was thinking about his time yesterday and bitterly wished he'd opened the letter in the hall. Uncle Vernon and Aunt Petunia kept looking at each other darkly. When the post arrived, Uncle Vernon, who seemed to be trying to be nice to Harry, made Dudley go and get it. They heard him banging things with a smelting stick all the way down the hall. Then he shouted, "There's another one." Mr. Harry brought out the smallest bedroom for a private drive. So Dudley really doesn't seem to be the brightest. I mean, knowing now, he could have just opened it there in the hall. With a strangled cry, Uncle Vernon leapt from his seat and ran down the hall, Harry right behind him. Uncle Vernon had to wrestle Dudley to the ground to get the letter from him, which was made difficult by the fact that Harry had grabbed Uncle Vernon around the neck from behind. After a minute of confused fighting, in which everyone got hit a lot by the smelting stick, Uncle Vernon straightened up, gasping for breath, with Harry's letter clutched in his hand. "Go to your cupboard, your bedroom," he wheezed at Harry. "Dudley, go, just go." Harry walked round and round in his new room. Someone knew he had moved out of his cupboard, and they seemed to know he had received his first letter. Surely that means they'd try again, and this time he'd make sure it didn't fail. He had a plan. That's it with part 1 of chapter 3 of Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. You're gonna find chapter 3 part 2 in the next video. I hope you liked this video and that it helped you relax, and I'm happy if you give this video a like and leave a comment, and I'm also happy